Hello friends, welcome to this week's broadcast of the verses in the book Living Wisely, Living Well by Swami Kriyananda. This week of inspiration from this book Living Wisely, Living Well, Swamiji offers very specific guidance to men and women for the spiritual path. And the guidance for today is for women. Because it comes more naturally to you to be personal, concentrate on developing an intimate I and thou relationship with God. Serve Him in personal ways. Create a beautiful altar. Surround yourself with inspiring spiritual images. Enjoy nature's beauties as God's gift to you personally. Before we go into discussion on the specific advice, let's back up a bit and discuss about the masculine and feminine aspects of our nature, just to give ourselves a context of the specific advice for women. In our being, each one of us has both the masculine and the feminine aspect. In fact, Yogananda ji said, the masculine is a positive side, and it expresses itself in terms of discrimination, in terms of reason, in terms of impersonalness, whereas the feminine nature, which is negative, expresses itself through love, through feeling, through love for beauty, through appreciation, and so on. Now, in the ideal being, both these natures, both the masculine and the feminine natures, are completely balanced. But in most of us, either one or the other is dominant. And most of us have already had, in past incarnations, been in male and female bodies both, expressing both of those principles at any time. And in this life, whichever gender we are born as, Swamiji here recommends that we honor that principle and express it positively in our life rather than try to compete, because we will see that in our social cultural constructs, often there is a rivalry between men and women. We are often challenging or fighting or resisting gender stereotypes. And here, Yogananda ji very clearly says that both aspects are important to mankind. The masculine tendency is towards reason, the female tendency is towards feeling. And both reason and feeling need to balance each other. Men complain that women are emotional and unreasonable. Women complain that men are unfeeling, cold, and harsh sometimes. So what we want to understand as we express either of these principles is that both principles have their positive and their negative aspects, and specifically for women, we want to learn how to respect the feminine principle within us. If we look at the dominant attitudes or values in society today, it's given more towards ambition, competition, drive, finances, confidence, all of which are masculine attitudes. Feminine attitudes like service, humility, unconditional love, self-giving nature, they are often sidelined and looked at as old-fashioned. In this discussion today, let us also explore how we can move towards respecting the feminine principle within each one of us. Yogananda ji once shared a story about a man who was talking about his conversation with a woman friend, and he mentioned to her that women sometimes, the trouble is that they take everything so personally. And the women remonstrated, saying, "Oh, what nonsense, I don't." And they both had a good laugh, because she just realized that she had just responded very personally to that statement. How can we as women express more the aspect of unconditional love and self-giving nature that is very innate within us? Swamiji says here, Because it comes more naturally to you to be personal, concentrate on developing an intimate I and thou relationship with God. We have many women saints who exemplify this principle. For example, take Mirabai. Her relationship with Lord Krishna was an intensely personal relationship of love, and she looked at Lord Krishna as her beloved, as a lover, and her songs would often express that pain, that joy of love. And of course, it was not in an emotional sense. She was conveying not the emotional aspect of love, but that love of the Atma with the Paramatma, the union of the individual soul with the universal soul. But this is a beautiful example of how women can use that personalness, that sense of that sense of giving nature, of love, that of motherliness, that of affection, that of a daughter, or even in the sense of of a friend, to cultivating that relationship with the Lord on the spiritual path. In fact, I remember the story about that Saint Therese of Lisieux, France, shares. She talks about she talks about offering to God all the fruits of your labor. I forget the exact words in which she phrases it, but in essence, it is talking about the Nishkam karma that we learn in yoga science, that give to God even the fruits of all your actions. And this is also a very good way to embody the I and thou principle, that Lord, thou art the doer, and I am a vehicle, I am an instrument for you to flow through. And in so, in every thought and action, in so thinking and so being, we allow that I and thou relationship to take us beyond the ego consciousness of the feminine principle. The feminine manifestation of ego, Swamiji said, expresses itself in terms of nurturing, wanting to nurture oneself and others. And he said, when we try to suppress that nurturing instinct, we find dryness of heart, of feeling, of emotions. So how can we, as women, practice seeing the light in people, practice of feeling love in situations, in challenges, instead of resisting them, instead of fighting them and trying to overcome or even be intimidated by them? How can we be humble, and how can we sometimes pass beneath those showers? There's again a beautiful story that I would share of Saint Therese of France. She said she's here counseling one of her sisters in the convent, who has written to her that she was going through a very difficult temptation. And she said, I'm finding it very difficult to surmount this temptation, this challenge. And Saint Therese very sweetly writes to her, why think of surmounting it? Pass beneath. Sometimes it is good to suffer the showers. It is okay to get wet. It's okay to suffer a bit. She said, God's love is always waiting for us at the corner. And this is a very beautiful way to be able to build that spirit of acceptance, which is also a feminine principle. That spirit of acceptance, of lovingly accepting whatever is in front of us as a gift of divine love. This we also know is a practice of bhakti yoga, that even if we are picking up a straw from the floor or anything from the ground, we look at it as a way of picking it up with deep love to make of it an offering to God. This is a way of practicing the presence of God. And these attitudes of the heart go a long way in healing our consciousness, in helping us move forward towards union, towards embracing what is in front of us, within us and around us, rather than dividing or resisting or fighting it. Another story that I'm reminded of is when Paramahansa Yogananda shares his vision of Divine Mother, when he longingly asks Divine Mother and wants to know whether she loves him or not. And he writes how Divine Mother comes to him in a vision and tells him, always have I loved thee, ever will I love thee. And this is a universal message that Paramahansa Yogananda ji shares through his book Autobiography of a Yogi, that often we feel unloved in the world, in competing with people in the world, and competing and trying. Many women these days are trying to be like men, asking or kind of contending that, oh, we are not any lesser. Men sometimes think women are inferior, women sometimes think men are inferior. Swamiji writes, writes of an attitude he faced in his spiritual life, where he was told that women are more spiritual than men. So we can get into these inner conflicts of attitudes where we think one or other is superior or inferior. But Yogananda ji said that both are equal, that all we need to look at is how can we use our own innate approach to win our own laurels. We don't have to imitate women don't have to imitate men, or men don't have to imitate women, that we both can use our own unique strengths, principles in life, and win our battles. So instead of trying to be what is not our true nature, Swamiji here is recommending to us that we express what is our strength, nurture that, nourish that, at the same time develop the masculine aspect also. He said this because in our inner self, he said, there is always that longing, that desire to balance these two natures within ourselves, because that is what makes us a complete being. And he said the innate attraction between men and women often also is an instinctive expression of this inner need, but which often finds itself expressed outwardly through a need for marriage or union. But he said if we can balance these principles within us, then we can move towards a higher union, which is that of union with the divine. So even as we go through our daily life, friends, let us reflect on the highest is to balance both these principles, but not at the cost of either one of them. As women, let us learn to honor that principle within us, which is one of unconditional love, self-giving, something that the world needs in today's times. In fact, Yogananda ji, I'm reminded again of Yogananda ji's vision of Divine Mother, where he once cried out in an ecstasy. He said, "Oh Mother, you're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. Don't go away. The desires of men and women are driving you away." So if we can strive to express that beauty, which is an expression, a pure expression of our soul natures, and if we can work at cultivating these attitudes within us of acceptance, of unconditional love, of self-giving, then we begin to bring that or share or channel that power of Divine Mother into the world. And that is, in a sense, our dharma as women in this world. If we have come as a women into this incarnation, it becomes our duty to, like Divine Mother, to be unconditionally loving to her children, but also loving not to the degree that we make people dependent on us, but to make people independent, even as we shower them with the blessings of love and joy and beauty. And also, as the path of yoga shows us, to be able to experience, to feel Divine Mother in everything around us, in the flowers, in the trees, in the skies. And if we can, as Swamiji mentioned, intuit her smile behind our every thought, behind the feelings of our heart. In that way, we begin to become move more and more towards the divine aspect of our being. Om Shanti, Shanti.